Welcome to Session Sunday. Hi guys, it's Jack Edwards and today's video is going to be focusing on defending on transition. But before we get into this week's video, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe, and if you missed last week's video, click on the link above. Okay, so moving into the first part of this week's session, we're going to be focusing solely on defending when the ball transitions. So we're going to be setting our team up as if they're in possession to do a quick pattern, okay, to then we're going to be giving the ball basically to the attackers who are then looking to attack. So we're going to be focusing on our positioning once we lose the ball, how we recover and where we're trying to win it back. So before we get into it, let's have a look at how many players we've got this week and the equipment that we'll be using. So in total, there's 16 players, okay, in this session, but it's adaptable for more or less players, okay? So as you'll see in a second, there's going to be, where the defender's going to be, there's going to be 2 players on each cone, okay? So let's say you had 12 players instead of 15 outfield players plus your goalkeeper. You could just have 3 of the areas, just having 2 players in. So you maybe might take 2 full-backs out, 1 midfielder out, okay? Or they could even try and rotate. If you have more players, let's say you had 18 players, you can add 2 more attackers in, okay? And then maybe you could swap over with the wings in here, okay? So you just adapt it for how many players that you've got. You're trying to have more defenders in it, but you're trying to make it equal, so it's going to be 5v5, okay? So obviously if you only had 10 players, you can work it 5v5 and you can just have a bit more rest in between each repetition. In terms of the equipment for this week, we're just going to be looking at using balls, bibs, and cones, and then when we have small-sided goals, if you don't have small-sided goals, if you have poles that you can use, that'd be great, obviously, to use instead of using cones. Poles are a bit more realistic for the goal for the players. In terms of the setup for this part of the session, in terms of the width, okay, you're trying to use as much as you can because you're trying to have it as if the players are spread out. So the centre-backs here, you're looking for them to be at least 20 yards apart, okay? And then the 2 wide players here, you're looking for them to be at least 15 yards apart, okay? So you're looking 15 this side, 15 this side, and at least 20 in the middle. So you're looking at least 50 yards of depth. But you kind of want more space in the middle, in between the 2 centre-backs, because that's where the opposition is going to look to attack, and then that's where we're going to look to recover quickly to protect the centre of the pitch. So if you did have 50 yards, you could even go 30 centrally and 10 yards either side for the full-backs, okay? But try and use, if you've only got 40 yards, you can maybe go same again, you maybe get 25 centrally and then 7 or 8 either side for the full-backs. So try and use as much width as you can to make it difficult for the defenders getting back in. Obviously with younger players, you can adapt that and make it a little bit smaller in terms of the positioning in it, on the pitches that they use, okay? You're trying to use it in relative to that. So if they play on a pitch which is 30 yards wide, okay, use the full 30 yards, have a little bit bigger area in the middle, and then the players just hogging the touchline out wide. In terms of the depth, okay, so again, you want the 2 the centre-backs, the distance between the centre-backs and the goalkeepers to be 20 yards, okay, if you can. Then the centre-backs are going to look to push up the pitch as the ball comes forward, okay. So it's 20 yards to here, and then we're going 30 yards to the 2 midfielders in here, so 50 yards. You can increase that or decrease it as well, depending on obviously the age group and how many players you're working with. And then these players in here are going to be a further 5 yards in behind. So if you have 20 yards in here, you could go 10, 10, 10, or you could just go 10, 5, and 15. Again, depending on what distances you want. So how it's going to work is the ball will start with the goalkeeper. So each time it can just change. So they can play out to the left side the first time, right side the second time. So it gets played out to the centre-back, plays to the left-back, okay? And then the left-back looks to take a touch out the feet, so they're stepping up, okay? So when the ball comes into them, they're stepping up. We're looking for the centre-backs to step up, the other centre-backs to come up, the other full-back to come up as if it's in possession, okay? Then we're looking for the midfielder to create an angle to receive it, as if they're going to receive it. When in reality, okay, it's going to go to one of the midfield players. If you wanted to, you could play it into the midfielder, who then could play the ball into one of the greens, but you want to try and get the ball into there, so this player's got to recover. So they want to try and keep it realistic, as if they're going to get the ball, okay, but they're actually not going to do it. They're actually not going to receive it, they're then going to be recovering. Okay, so for the players, you're telling them to do this because when they go into the small sided games, these are the type of things that are going to be happening. When they do lose the ball, they're going to be having to recover from spaces that are away from the opposition. So as that ball comes into the greens here, they're then looking to attack. They're looking to attack this area in here, attack the goal. So what's the first thing we do? We're looking to protect the centre of the pitch, okay? Then we're looking to delay, deny, and then deflect away from goal. So we're focusing on our recovery runs. So the players who aren't actively playing, okay, the centre-backs can either stay on the cone as close as they can, or they can just pull off to the side in here. So they're just creating that avenue for the greens to go to goal. The full-backs, so the player who had the ball is going to be a little bit further forward than the opposite full-back. They're looking to recover inside the pitch, okay, to protect that space out wide and force the opposition into areas where they can win the ball. The centre midfielder is just looking to recover, okay, so if a midfielder is travelling towards the goal, can they put pressure on the player, force them into a decision quickly? So for the two centre-backs, if the midfielder plays out wide, okay, and this wide player starts to drive in, what we're looking then for then is the centre-back to then go, okay, assess what foot the player is. If it's right-footed, can we show them inside on the left foot, okay? Get players inside, protect the centre of the pitch, but also put them on the weaker side. If they're left-footed, can we show them away from goal, okay? And show them on the right foot. But what you got to think is, if we're showing them inside, we're still trying to show them away from goal. So it's not showing them inside and showing them the goal, it's showing them inside and showing them across the pitch. So they keep travelling across, and eventually, when they try to play a ball or when they get into an area, we can intercept it. Okay, so it's all reactive. Okay, we've got to have that willingness to get back, and then when we do win the ball, the play is dead, and then the next group comes in. So we have two players here, the two players come into here like that. Our fullbacks go to the back, centre backs go to the back, and then the attackers in here go back to the start, and we repeat again. So you can just change players over as well if you wanted to throughout the drill. We will now move into our first animation before moving on to part 2 of this week's session. Now moving into part 2 of this week's session, we're moving into the first of our 2 small-sided games. So the first small-sided game is going to be focusing on 1 line of pressure, okay? The second small-sided game is going to be focusing on 2 lines of pressure, okay? So we're looking on, when we lose the ball now, it's just a defence, okay? We're going to have the hold midfielder as well, okay, just to put in, but we can adapt that as well if you have less players, so then it would just be the back 4. Because we've got 16 players, I'm adapting it to, one team's having 7, one team's having 8, okay, and they're having a back 4 and a midfielder, okay, so there's the 1 line of pressure, but we're trying to do it as if this play is going to be broken out early, okay, if we lose the ball in here, or if we lose the ball in here, it's played straight in, which means this player is going to have to recover quickly. And then the second drill is going to be focusing on trying to press in midfield, okay, when we lose the ball, trying to prevent it going into where it's just going to be the defenders, so breaking that line of pressure, which would mean there's only 1 line of pressure towards goal. So in terms of the setup for this part of the session, in terms of depth, you're looking about 50 yards again, okay? So in this area here, we're going 40 yards. We're trying to do it just so there's space to attack. And then 10 yards in here, increase or decrease depending on the age group. It's quite a good drill to use in all age groups, okay? You just adapt it to your players. So if you're working with younger players, it can be that, obviously, let's say if you work 8v8, okay, you could have your 2 defenders, okay, and then you could have 3 midfielders, so 5 players in here, not more as fullbacks but more as midfielders, okay. The opposition might have 1 up front and then they might have their midfield 3, okay, so there's 5 players, and then it could be 2v2 in here instead. Again, if you have more or less players, adapt it how you do, but you're just looking for 1 line of pressure in here. It could be that you want to make it into a game where the opposite, where you're playing to this area and then you'd have a further area in here where you'd have strikers against defenders to then go and score. So in terms of the width, okay, judge it however you want, but I recommend between 30 and 40 yards, okay? 40 yards is probably better in terms of how many players that we've got here. If you have less players, you can decrease it again, wanting that space to attack. So for the Blues, it's about maintaining possession, okay? And then if they lose the ball, recovering quickly. So the ball can start with the goalkeeper. the ball can also start if the coach is positioned round, just playing into one of the players. So the Blues are just looking to keep the ball. They've got an overload in here, 5 versus 4, so they can create gaps to play into the midfielders, okay? Every time they play into midfielders, okay, it can be a point, okay? Or it can be every 5 passes, they then can play into midfield. So when the ball comes back in here, they have to complete 5 passes again or 3 passes before playing into midfielders. What it tries to do then is entice the Greens to try and win the ball when it goes in here. So if the Greens do win the ball, they play forward. So instantly, they're looking to break that line of pressure. Okay, so as if this is like the midfielders and a striker, they break that line of pressure and go and attack. So what do? Protect the centre of the pitch, delay, deny and deflect away from goal. Centre-backs getting into the position to protect that goal. Full-backs coming round and the midfielder, okay, the whole midfielder gets himself back in. Or if you're playing in a back 5, you can use it as back 5. The opposition looks to obviously attack the goal in a 5v4 scenario. These players stay locked in, but you can always swap them around if you have forward players and you want to put them in here. So what we're trying to do is deny the opportunities towards goal. So right now, okay, the players have narrowed off, okay, we're protecting the goal. If the ball looks to going behind, we can win it, okay, the goalkeeper's going to be set as well. If we're inviting shots from 25 yards out, it's got to be a great finish to get it past the goalie. So what we're trying to do is just prevent that quick pathway towards goal, close down the options, and then force the opposition into areas. Let's say the ball goes then wide, we can isolate it into 1v1, get ourselves set up, back into shape, and then look to win the ball when we can, and then keep it again. Okay, so it's that reaction to losing the ball, that tenacity and willingness to win it back, and being aware of our surroundings as well, covering the ground quickly, and then our body shape. Okay, so making sure we're not square on, showing the opposition where we've got that cover, okay, where we can win the ball back, and then when we can win the ball, being decisive to do so. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to the final part of this week's session. Okay, so moving into the final part of this week's session, we're now moving into our second small-sided game, okay, which is going to be focusing on 2 lines of pressure, okay, for the attackers to try and get through. So, but we're going to be putting players into certain areas, okay, and making them locked in possession, so that out of possession, the attackers have got more chance of transitioning quickly and towards the centre of the pitch, meaning that we've got to recover into the central areas. So in terms of the setup for this part of the session, we're going to go with 50 yards of depth from the goal line until the end here. Again, you can increase that if you want to as well, and obviously you can decrease it with less players and what age group you're working with. And then we're looking for around the similar, for around 50 yards in terms of width as well. 30 yards central, okay, we're looking for 30 yards centrally. And then either side, we're looking for at least 10 yards, okay, just because we're going to have 4 players in there. We want it to be quite tight, but also a bit we want them to have a little bit of space to be able to move in there as well. So the Blues have got 8 players and the Greens have got 7. So we're having 2 centre-backs, full-backs, holding midfielder. We're having this as like 2 midfielders / wide players and then a number 10 / striker to drop in. So they're going to have 4 players centrally, 4 players in wide areas. These players are locked in possession. If you want to, when you progress it, you can take that out and players can move anyway, okay? In terms of the Greens, they're not locked in. So when the ball's in centrally, the 2 wide players can come in if they want to as well. This is acting as if it is their full-backs who are going to look to support the attacks, and this is looking as if it's 2 midfielders. Okay, so you've got as if it's like 2 wingers, striker, 2 midfielders in behind, 2 full-backs. So the Blues are just looking to manoeuvre the ball into space and score in the goal. If they once they score in one of the goals, okay, they're obviously getting a point, okay? The coach will then play into the Greens to go and attack. So for the Greens, it might be that after a certain amount of passes, the coach gives them a time limit to score, because we don't want the Blues, thinking, oh, we can just keep the ball and it means we don't have to defend. They've got to actively look to get up the pitch, okay? So it can be that you might say to the Blues, if you score between 0 and 10 passes, maybe if you score between 0 to 5 passes, you get 3 goals. If you score between 5 to 10 passes, you get 2 goals. And then after that, it's only 1 goal. So it entices the players to try and score more quickly. If they lose the ball, Greens just go and attack. Out of possession, players can obviously free to move anywhere, okay? And then if they score, the coach looks to play in. The coach will always look to play into a central area, okay, for the Greens to go and attack. So an example, this could be played out to the centre-back, Greens looking to press, we can play into our holding midfielder. Obviously, they're going to look to push up the pitch. Centre-back can receive the ball, play into the full-back. The wide play might entice a player in here. It gets played in and they score. So that was within 5 passes, okay? So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then that pass in there is obviously 1 to score. So then they can have 3 goals. As soon as that happens, ball can get played into the holding midfielder here. Okay, what are we looking for? We've got the 2 lines of pressure. We've got a midfielder here. Okay, is who's going to be behind the ball this time, whereas in the last drill, it was missing him out really. Missing the player out, sorry. And then they've got the full-backs, okay, looking to recover in, and then we've got these wider players looking to recover centrally. And this player in here, okay, is kind of like the spare man, but can get back, but it's not as important for them, okay? But also at the same time, it might be that someone's out of position and the ball's on the opposite side. So when the ball comes in here, they can just look to drop in to support, and then this player can obviously market this play in here, but it's not as important for them to get back quickly. So it just depends on in relation to the ball. So when the Greens get the ball in here, they're looking to attack quickly. So the ball might get played into here. Centre backs again, body shape, narrow off the centre of the pitch, protect the centre. Okay, can we get players in position to win the ball? Can we deny the opposition a pathway to goal? And then can we look when the ball gets across to try and pinch the ball and then get the ball on transition, try and score. So on transition, if you get it in 5 passes into a goal, there's another 3 goals. Okay. For the Greens, for them, it's when they get the ball, getting players up the pitch to make it more difficult. Okay, so you've got the 3 players central, okay, in terms of the wingers and the striker with the midfielders, but these full-backs, they're in there for a reason. So when players get the ball, they can push on, and then they can look to try and create crossing scenarios, which means that the Blues have got to drop deeper when the ball goes in there to try and win the ball. So for the Blues, as soon as they've lost that ball, okay, what's our reaction to losing the ball? The defenders, especially the centre-backs, okay, they've got to set the tone by denying space, okay, deflecting away from goal and delaying the attacker. So slow them down, okay, make it difficult for them to progress up the pitch. And when the ball is in here as well, if these midfielders can get in tight quickly, okay, and the full-backs can recover in, then we're in a compact shape, okay? And then for the Greens, it becomes a lot more in terms of they've got to be patient in trying to get themselves forwards when the ball's coming wide in here. We're back into our settled shape. We get our forward player here screening passes. So once this happens, this is when this player becomes more involved defensively. Once we're back in more of a compact shape, okay, then there's 2 lines of pressure to beat. When the ball goes wide again, we shift across, again, protect the centre of the pitch when the ball comes in here, kind of be congested. When the opposition look to move forward, win the ball, and then can we look to transition and score quickly. So transition to get up the pitch as quick as we can. We will now move into our final animation before concluding this week's session. Thanks for watching this week's video. Don't forget to head over to our website where you can sign up to view all of our exclusive content. And we'll see you next week for another Session Sunday.